Hello people and welcome to a Visual Basic tutorial. Today we will be learning how to use basic if-then statements in Visual Basic. So first what you want to do is create a new project and then select the Windows Forms application, and then you hit OK, and then that brings you up to this window. And this is for very beginners who don't really know anything about Visual Basic. So it'll bring you to this window, and then you can just, the first thing I like to do at least is name the form. So it doesn't just say form 1, it actually has like a form name. So you want to call this FRM, and then I'll just call this if then. FRM is a abbreviation for form. We also use those like in button and text box, but I'll get into that a little bit later. And then we can also just name this if then, and then I'll change the name up here. And how we open the code editor window is we can hit F7, or we can just double click the form, which will open up actually a form load event. And we don't really need anything on the form load for this basic project here, but in the future maybe you want to start your program centered on the screen or in full screen mode, so then that form load can be useful. So the first thing we're going to do is add a text box to the screen, and then make this multi-lined just for aesthetic purposes, and then make that big. And then I'm like very OCD about this stuff. Paste that and make sure it's all even. There we go. And the next thing we're going to do is add a button to it, and make that center. Okay, now that we have our two text box, we're going to make this text box readable only by going into the properties menu here, and then we can just select that to be true. So now if you launch your program, you can either hit this button or hit F5. I like to hit F5, but just for the video's sake, I'll just press that button. You can type stuff into here, but you cannot type stuff into here. Okay, so next let's just add some color to our form. Just how do you change the color is you just do the back color, or if you want to make things a little bit more complicated, you can use the form load, and then you could define colors using code, like with FRM if then, and then whatever with me, and then you could just do like dot back color equals green. Oh crap, no, it needs to be color dot green. Color dot green. So now it'll start off green, but that's a little bit like unnecessary, I think. An easier way to do it would just be click on the form, and then go into the properties menu, and then select back color. Then you have a wider range of options, so you don't have to type in everything. I usually like to go with this color since it's not too bright, not too anything. Alright, next we're going to name this text box. So an abbreviation for text box is TXT, and keep in mind that this does not affect the code at all. This is just for your sake, or if you're reading someone's code, or someone else is reading your code, they like to be able to see what you're talking about. So the abbreviation for text box is TXT, and then we'll call this TXT input, and we'll call this one, crap, no, don't want to do that. And we'll call this one TXT output. And then we'll name this BTN, which is abbreviation for button, and go. And then we'll change the name of the button and the text to go. Excuse me. And then how we change the color of the button is we go to the back color of the button, and then we'll just change it to green. And I also like changing the font. I have a few predefined fonts, and we'll just go ahead and do that one. And just for future references, if you do get into Visual Basic programming, the fonts that you use, if you downloaded them like I have off the internet, the fonts, they will not show up in other people's programs if they do not have the font, since it uses Microsoft fonts, and if Microsoft can't find those fonts, then it won't show up in that person's program. So make sure you're careful when experimenting with fonts in programs, because I learned that the hard way. Okay. So next what we want to do, we want to double click on the button, and that'll automatically open up this private sub button go click, or button go underscore click, and this is just basically a click event. Or if we did not want to double click it for whatever reason, we could just select here, select button 1, and then we could select the click event. So first what we want to do is we want to use something called dim, or dimension. And if you have any experience whatsoever in coding languages, or just like heard coding talk or whatever, it is very similar to the code var, which a lot of other languages use. But this one does not. It uses dim. I don't really know why, but it does. So we want to dim, and we'll just name it user selection. And we want to dim it as string. And what that means is we are defining, I like to say instead of dimension, I like to use this, say define. We are defining user selection as string, which is, if I highlight over it, it represents a text. It represents text, a series of Unicode characters, which is just basically anything on your keyboard. And here you'll see a little, like, it's not an error, so like your program, it'll still run, won't get any errors, but it's just telling you that this has not been used. It has been defined, but it has not been used. Okay, next we want to use the variable. So we want to have user selection is equal to text box input.text. And what that means is whatever, now instead of the user selection just being equal to any string in the world, it'll be equal to only the string that is in this text box. So now the computer doesn't see any string at all. It just sees the string that is in this text box. So if there's no string in this text box, user selection will not be used. So next, what we want to do, we want to start our if-then statement. So we want to just say if user selection is equal to test input. And keep in mind, capitalization does matter, because for whatever reason, I don't really know why, but it'll run into an error there, but whatever. This and this are two different letters. Oh, that's a bad example, because they're, I'll just do like T. This and this are two different Unicode characters according to the computer. I don't know why, that's just how it is, and I'll run into an error there because I haven't finished it. Okay, so if user selection is equal to test input, then we want to have text output.text equal to test output. So now if we run the program and we type test input, the box should say test output, and it does. And so what we want to do so now that'll just happen. So if you type anything other than that, nothing will just happen. So something that we want to add in our within our if-then statement is something called an else. And else and else-if are two completely different things. An else means anything else that is physically possible. But an else-if is different in a way that, like, if you type in this and this, or something other than the main if. And I won't go too in depth on that. It's kind of hard to explain. I kind of have to show you, but I'm not doing else-if statements in this video. So we want to do else, and then, stop that. So else, we will just display a message box, and we'll have the message box say error. And then what I like to do with message boxes is we can change this to message box critical. So now if we type test input, oh crap, I misspelled test. Well, there you go. And that's what happens if you don't spell it right. So test input, it'll say test output, and then it'll just run into an error. And keep in mind that, like I said before, this is not test input according to the computer, because a capital T and a lowercase t are two different Unicode characters. I don't know whose bright idea that was, but that's just how it is. So if you wanted to make it so that they could type in either a lowercase or capital, you could actually make an else-if statement. So I guess I will show you else-if statements. So, no crap. Oh, let's put this after this. Sorry. So now we want or no, we don't. Hold up. I am confusing myself. Stupid errors. Okay, so yeah, whatever. Shut up. Else if. Okay. So now we want else if is equal to test input. So now, if we type in capital, no matter if we type in capital or lowercase, it will still work. But if we type in anything else, it'll run into an error here.